The Galactic Council chamber was a marvel of alien engineering, a vast dome of shimmering crystal that refracted light into a kaleidoscope of colors. Delegates from a dozen species filled the room, their voices a cacophony of clicks, hums, and guttural growls. At the center of it all stood Captain Sarah Ironheart Mitchell, her posture rigid, her sharp blue eyes scanning the crowd. Behind her, the holographic image of humanity's first interstellar warship, the USS Dauntless, rotated slowly. To the aliens, it was a patchwork monstrosity, a hodgepodge of human ingenuity and salvaged alien tech. To Sarah, it was a symbol of hope. "This," boomed the Zorath delegate, a towering insectoid creature with iridescent wings, "is what you call a warship. It looks like a child's toy assembled from scrap." Laughter rippled through the chamber, a sound that grated on Sarah's nerves. She clenched her fists but kept her expression neutral. She had expected this. Humanity was the new kid on the block, and the Galactic Council loved nothing more than putting upstarts in their place. Beside her, Dr. Michael Carter adjusted his glasses, his lips twitching into a smirk. "Well, Captain," he muttered, "at least they're paying attention to us, even if it's for all the wrong reasons." Michael was the Dauntless's chief engineer, a man whose mind worked faster than his mouth. His lab coat was perpetually stained with grease, and his dark hair was a chaotic mess, but his brilliance was undeniable. He had a knack for seeing potential where others saw junk, and the Dauntless was his masterpiece. "Attention is good," Sarah replied quietly, her voice steady. "But respect is better. Let's not give them any more reasons to laugh." At the far end of the chamber, Lieutenant Emily Harris leaned against a console, her arms crossed. At just 26, she was the youngest member of the crew, but her reputation as a pilot was already legendary. Her call sign, Dreamer, came from her habit of proposing strategies so unconventional they bordered on insane. Right now she was studying the alien delegates with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "They're all so predictable," she said to no one in particular. "Big ships, big guns, big egos, no imagination." Sergeant Jake Thompson, standing nearby, chuckled. "Yeah, well, imagination doesn't win wars, kid. Big guns do." Jake was the wild card of the group, a Marine with a reputation for bending the rules and a sense of humor that could lighten even the darkest situations. His rugged features and easy grin made him a favorite among the crew, but his sharp instincts and quick thinking were what made him indispensable. The Zorath delegate stepped closer to the hologram, its multifaceted eyes glinting with disdain. "This thing," it sneered, "is an insult to the Galactic Council. You expect us to believe it can defend your species? It is a joke." Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. "The USS Dauntless may not look like your ships, but it's more than capable of holding its own. Humanity may be new to the stars, but we've earned our place here." The chamber fell silent for a moment, the aliens caught off guard by her defiance. Then the laughter returned, louder this time. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. She had faced worse than ridicule in her career, and she wasn't about to let a bunch of arrogant aliens shake her resolve. As the delegates continued to mock the Dauntless, Michael leaned closer to Sarah. "You know, Captain, they're not entirely wrong. The ship's a work in progress, but that's the beauty of it. It's adaptable. We can improve it, make it better than anything they've got." Sarah nodded. "I know, but we'll need to prove it to them. Words won't be enough." The key. Meeting ended with the Galactic Council dismissing humanity's claims and relegating the Dauntless to a minor patrol route on the edge of human space. It was a slap in the face, but Sarah accepted the assignment without complaint. She knew this was their chance to show what the Dauntless and humanity could do. As the crew boarded the ship, Jake clapped Sarah on the shoulder. "Cheer up, Captain." They laughed at the Wright brothers too, and look how that turned out. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Let's just hope we don't crash and burn." The Dauntless departed the Council's homeworld under a cloud of ridicule, but the mood aboard the ship was anything but defeated. Emily was already brainstorming ways to improve the ship's maneuverability, while Michael tinkered with the engines, muttering about untapped potential. Jake kept the crew's spirits high with his usual mix of jokes and bravado, and Sarah focused on the task ahead. As the ship entered hyperspace, Sarah stood on the bridge, staring out at the swirling vortex of light. "They think we're a joke," she said quietly, "but we'll show them what humanity is made of." The crew exchanged determined glances, their resolve unshaken. The Dauntless might have been the laughingstock of the galaxy, but they were about to prove that even a joke could have a deadly punchline. The USS Dauntless drifted silently through the void, its patchwork hull glinting faintly under the light of a distant star. The patrol route assigned by the Galactic Council was uneventful, a stretch of space so barren it felt like a cosmic backwater. But for Captain Sarah Mitchell and her crew, it was an opportunity, a chance to test the ship's limits and prove its worth. Sarah stood on the bridge, her arms crossed as she studied the star chart displayed on the main console. "Anything on sensors?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with anticipation. Lieutenant Emily Harris, seated at the pilot's station, shook her head. "Nothing yet, Captain. Just a whole lot of empty space. If the Council wanted to bore us to death, they're doing a great job." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Emily's dry humor was a welcome distraction from the monotony. "Keep your eyes sharp, Lieutenant. Out here, nothing can turn into something real fast." In the engineering bay, Dr. Michael Carter was elbow-deep in the ship's power systems, his tools scattered across the floor. The Dauntless' engines hummed softly, a sound that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. But Michael wasn't satisfied. He knew the ship had potential the Galactic Council couldn't see. He just needed to unlock. "Taz, Captain," he said over the comms, "I've been running diagnostics on the power core. There's a lot of inefficiency in the system. If I can reroute some of the energy flow, we might be able to squeeze out a little more speed." Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker. "Do it, but don't push the systems too hard. We're a long way from home if something goes wrong." "Understood," Michael replied, though his mind was already racing with possibilities. He loved a good challenge, and the Dauntless was the ultimate puzzle. Sergeant Jake Thompson, meanwhile, was in the mess hall, regaling a group of junior crew members with one of his infamous stories. "So there I was," he said, leaning back in his chair, staring down a Zorath patrol with nothing but a plasma cutter and a bad attitude. "You should have seen their faces when I—" The ship's intercom interrupted him. "Sergeant Thompson, to the bridge," Sarah's voice called. "We've got something on sensors." Jake grinned and stood up, cracking his knuckles. "Duty calls, kids. Don't worry, I'll finish the story later." When he arrived on the bridge, Sarah was already studying the sensor readouts. "What have we got?" he asked, his tone shifting from playful to professional. "Unknown object," Emily replied, her fingers dancing across the console. "It's not moving, but it's giving off a faint energy signature. Could be a derelict ship." Sarah nodded. "Let's check it out. Emily, bring us in closer. Jake, assemble a boarding team. If there's anything useful on that thing, I want it." As the Dauntless approached the derelict, the crew's excitement grew. The ship was unlike anything they'd seen before, a sleek, angular design that suggested advanced technology. But it was clearly damaged, its hull scarred and pitted from some long-ago battle. "Life signs?" Sarah asked. "Negative," Emily replied. "Looks like it's been abandoned for a while." "Good. Jake, take your team in. Michael, you're with them. I want to know what we're dealing with." The boarding party suited up and crossed the short distance to the derelict, their boots clanging against the metal hull. Inside, the ship was dark and eerily silent, the air thick with dust. Jake led the way, his rifle at the ready, while Michael scanned the surroundings with a handheld device. "This is some high-end tech," Michael muttered, his voice tinged with awe. "Whoever built this knew what they were doing." "Yeah. Well, they're not here anymore," Jake replied. "Let's see if we can find anything useful before the ghosts show up." They moved deeper into the ship, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. In the engine room, Michael's device began to beep frantically. "Over here," he said, his excitement palpable. He knelt beside a strange, crystalline object embedded in the floor. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "What is it?" Jake asked, peering over his shoulder. "A power core," Michael replied, his eyes wide. "And not just any power core. This thing is incredible. If I can integrate it into the Dauntless's systems, we could double our energy output. Maybe more." Jake whistled. "Sounds like a game changer. Let's get it back to the ship." Back on the Dauntless, Michael worked tirelessly to integrate the alien power core into the ship's systems. The process was delicate, requiring precise adjustments, and a steady hand. Emily hovered nearby, offering suggestions and occasionally rolling her eyes at Michael's muttered curses. "You sure this is a good idea?" she asked as he tightened a final bolt. "We don't even know where this thing came from." "That's the beauty of it," Michael replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's a mystery, and mysteries are meant to be solved." Sarah watched from the doorway, her arms crossed. "Just make sure it doesn't blow up my ship, Doctor." Michael grinned. "No promises, Captain." When the core was finally activated, the Dauntless shuddered as a surge of energy coursed through its systems. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines grew louder. For a moment, everything seemed to be working perfectly. Then the alarms blared. Power surge. "In the main reactor," Emily shouted, her hands flying across the console. "We're losing stability." Sarah's voice was calm but firm. "Michael, shut it down." "I'm trying," he replied, his fingers racing across the controls. "The core's feedback loop is overloading the system. I need to reroute the energy flow." Jake appeared in the doorway, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "Need a hand, Doc?" "Not unless you know how to recalibrate a quantum flux capacitor." No. "Then stay out of my way." With a final, desperate adjustment, Michael managed to stabilize the system. The alarms fell silent, and the ship's lights returned to normal. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "Well," Michael said, leaning back in his chair, "that was exciting." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Exciting isn't the word I'd use. But it worked. The core's integrated, and the ship's running smoother than ever." Emily grinned. "Looks like we've got a few surprises up our sleeves after all." Jake clapped Michael on the shoulder. "Nice work, Doc, but next time, maybe give us a heads up before you almost blow us all to kingdom come." Michael chuckled. "Where's the fun in that?" As the crew returned to their duties, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The Dauntless was more than just a ship. It was a testament to humanity's ingenuity and determination. And with the new power core, they were one step closer to proving their worth to the galaxy. But as she gazed out at the stars, a thought nagged at the back of her mind. The derelict ship hadn't been abandoned by accident. Something, or someone, had damaged it. And if they were still out there, the Dauntless might be in more danger than anyone realized. The USS Dauntless hummed with newfound energy, its systems running smoother and faster than ever, thanks to the alien power core. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the star chart. The crew had settled into a rhythm, their confidence growing with each passing day. But Sarah knew better than to let her guard down. The galaxy was full of surprises, and not all of them were pleasant. "Captain," Lieutenant Emily Harris called from the pilot station, her voice tinged with urgency, "I'm picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors. They're moving fast, straight toward us." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Identify them." Emily's fingers danced across the console. "No transponder signals, but the energy. Signatures match Zorath warships. Looks like a full squadron." Sarah's jaw clenched. The Zorath Collective, the same race that had mocked humanity at the Galactic Council, was known for its ruthless efficiency. If they were here, it wasn't for a friendly chat. "Sound General Quarters. Jake, get to the armory and prep the Marines. Michael, I need you in engineering. If that core gives us an edge, now's the time to use it." The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and purposeful. Jake's voice crackled over the comms as he rallied the Marines, his usual humor replaced by a steely determination. "Listen up, people. We've got hostiles inbound and they're not bringing flowers. Lock and load, and remember, Aim for the shiny bits. In engineering, Dr. Michael Carter was already at work, his hands flying across the control panels. The alien power core pulsed with a steady rhythm, its energy flowing through the ship like a living thing. "Captain," he said over the comms, "I've boosted power to the shields and weapons, but we're pushing the core to its limits. If we overdo it, we could fry the entire system." "Understood," Sarah replied. "Do what you can, but keep us in one piece." The Zorath ships emerged from hyperspace in a flash of light, their sleek, angular hulls bristling with weapons. They formed a tight formation, their movements synchronized and deliberate. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but the Dauntless had one advantage: unpredictability. "Emily," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm, "I need you to think outside the box. These guys are used to fighting by the book. Let's give them something they've never seen before." Emily grinned, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "I've got just the thing. Hold on to your hats, everyone." The Dauntless surged forward, its engines roaring as Emily executed a series of maneuvers that defied conventional tactics. The ship twisted and turned, its movements erratic and unpredictable. The Zorath ships struggled to keep up, their formation breaking as they tried to adjust. "Shields at 80%, Emily reported. "They're firing, but they can't get a lock on us." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Good work, Lieutenant. Now let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine. Jake, prepare to launch boarding pods. We're taking the fight to them." Jake's voice came through the comms, his tone fierce. "Boarding team's ready, Captain. Just say the word." "Do it." The Dauntless launched a volley of boarding pods, each one carrying a team of Marines led by Jake. The pods streaked through the void, their trajectories calculated to avoid enemy fire. Jake's heart pounded as his pod slammed into the hull of a Zorath cruiser, the impact jarring but not enough to slow him down. "Move, move, move," he barked, leading his team into the ship's interior. The Zorath soldiers were caught off guard, their rigid tactics no match for Jake's improvisational skills. He moved like a shadow, his rifle barking as he cleared the way for his team. Back on the Dauntless, Sarah watched the tactical display with a mixture of pride and anxiety. The boarding action was risky, but it was their best chance to turn the tide. "Michael," she said over the comms, "how's the core holding up?" "Barely," Michael replied, his voice strained. "We're pushing it to the limit, Captain. If we don't wrap this up soon, we're going to have a very big problem." Sarah nodded. "Understood. Emily, keep them on their toes. Jake, you've got 5 minutes to disable that ship." Jake's response was drowned out by the sound of gunfire as his team fought their way to the Zorath cruiser's engine room. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning circuitry, but Jake pressed on, his determination unwavering. "This is it," he said, planting a series of explosive charges on the engine core. "Let's blow this popsicle stand." The charges detonated with a deafening roar, the shockwave rippling through the ship. Jake and his team barely made it back to their pods before the Zorath cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light. On the Dauntless, Sarah watched as the enemy ship disintegrated, its destruction sending shockwaves through the remaining Zorath forces. "One down," she said, her voice steady. "Let's keep the pressure on." Emily executed another series of daring maneuvers, her piloting skills pushing the Dauntless to its limits. The Zorath ships struggled to keep up, their formation collapsing under the relentless assault. Michael monitored the power core, his hands trembling as he made adjustments to keep the system from overloading. "Captain," he said, his voice tight with tension, "we can't keep this up much longer. The core's reaching critical levels." Sarah's mind raced. They were close, so close to victory, but one misstep could cost them everything. "One more push," she said. "Emily, target their lead ship. Jake, get your team back here. We're ending this." The Dauntless surged forward, its weapons blazing as it targeted the Zorath flagship. The enemy ship's shields flickered and failed under the onslaught, its hull buckling under the strain. With a final devastating volley, the flagship exploded, its destruction sending the remaining Zorath ships into disarray. "That's it," Emily said, her voice filled with triumph. "They're retreating." Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Stand down, Jake. Get your team back on board. Michael, stabilize the core. We're not out of the woods yet." As the crew worked to secure the ship, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced overwhelming odds and come out on top. But the victory had come at a cost. The Dauntless was battered and bruised, its systems pushed to the brink, and the Zorath Collective wouldn't forget this defeat. But for now, they had won, and that was enough. The USS Dauntless limped back to the Galactic Council's homeworld, its hull scorched and its systems strained from the battle with the Zorath Collective. But despite the damage, the crew held their heads high. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, and now they were returning not as a joke but as heroes. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge, her posture as unyielding as ever. The weight of command rested heavily on her shoulders, but she wore it with quiet dignity. Beside her, Lieutenant Emily Harris monitored the ship's systems, her usual exuberance tempered by the gravity of their situation. In engineering, Dr. Michael Carter worked tirelessly to keep the alien power core stable, his hands moving with practiced precision. And in the mess hall, Sergeant Jake Thompson regaled the crew with a slightly exaggerated account of the boarding action, his laughter a welcome reminder of their resilience. As the Dauntless approached the Council's homeworld, Sarah received a transmission from the Council itself. The holographic image of the Zorath delegate flickered to life, its multifaceted eyes glinting with barely concealed anger. "Captain Mitchell," it said, its voice dripping with disdain, "you have much to answer for." Sarah met its gaze, without flinching. "We defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack. If the Council has a problem with that, I'd be happy to discuss it in person." The Zorath delegate hissed, its wings vibrating with irritation. "You will regret your arrogance, human." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Emily broke the tension with a snort. "Someone's not happy we kicked their butt." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Let's hope the rest of the Council is more reasonable." When the Dauntless docked at the Council's spaceport, the crew was met with a mix of curiosity and hostility. The alien delegates whispered among themselves, their eyes darting to the battered ship and its human crew. But Sarah walked with her head held high, her confidence unwavering. She had faced down the Zorath Collective, and she wasn't about to let a few disapproving stares shake her resolve. The council chamber was packed when Sarah and her senior officers entered. The air was thick with tension, the delegates' murmurs a low, ominous hum. Sarah took her place at the center of the room, her crew standing behind her like a shield. The Zorath delegate was the first to speak. "This human vessel," it said, gesturing to the holographic image of the Dauntless, "has violated galactic law by engaging in unauthorized combat. We demand that it be decommissioned and its crew punished." Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "The USS Dauntless acted in self-defense. The Zorath Collective attacked us without provocation, and we responded accordingly. If anyone here has violated galactic law, it's them." The chamber erupted into chaos, the delegates shouting over each other in a cacophony of voices. Sarah stood her ground, her expression calm but resolute. She had expected this reaction, and she was prepared to fight for her crew and her ship. Before the council could reach a decision, an alarm blared through the chamber. The lights flickered, and the holographic displays shifted to show a massive Zorath fleet emerging from hyperspace. The lead ship was a behemoth, its hull bristling with weapons and its engines glowing with ominous energy. The Zorath delegate turned to Sarah, its voice filled with venom. "You see now, human, your defiance has only brought destruction upon yourselves." Sarah's heart pounded, but she refused to show fear. "If the council won't stand with us, then we'll stand alone. But I promise you this, we won't go down without a fight." The crew of the Dauntless raced back to their ship, their movements swift and purposeful. The Zorath fleet was already closing in, their weapons charging as they prepared to unleash a devastating assault. Sarah took her place on the bridge, her mind racing as she formulated a plan. "Emily," she said, her voice steady, I need you to get us out of here. Take us through the asteroid field. It's our best chance to lose them." Emily nodded, her hands flying across the console. "You got it, Captain." As the Dauntless sped toward the asteroid field, the Zorath ships followed, their weapons firing in a relentless barrage. The ship shuddered under the impact, but Emily's piloting skills kept them one step ahead. Michael monitored the power, core, his brow furrowed with concentration. "We're pushing the core too hard," he said, his voice tight with worry. "If we don't ease up, it's going to blow." Sarah clenched her fists. "We don't have a choice. Keep it stable. As long as you can." Jake appeared on the bridge, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "What's the plan, Captain?" Sarah turned to him, her eyes blazing with determination. "We're going to give them a taste of their own medicine. Jake, prep the Marines. We're taking the fight to them." The Dauntless emerged from the asteroid field, its hull scarred, but intact. The Zorath fleet was close behind, their formation tight and disciplined. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage, the element of surprise. "Emily," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm, "bring us around. Target their lead ship." Emily grinned, her fingers dancing across the console. "With pleasure." The Dauntless spun on its axis, its weapons locking onto the Zorath flagship. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed under the onslaught, its hull buckling under the strain. With a final devastating volley, the flagship exploded, its destruction sending shockwaves through the remaining Zorath forces. The crew cheered as the enemy ships retreated, their formation collapsing under the relentless assault. Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet relief, but she knew the fight wasn't over. The Zorath Collective wouldn't forget this defeat, and neither would the Galactic Council. As the Dauntless returned to the Council's homeworld, the crew was met with a very different reception. The alien delegates watched in silence as Sarah and her officers entered the chamber, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. The Zorath delegate was conspicuously absent. Sarah took her place at the center of the room, her voice ringing out with quiet authority. "The USS Dauntless has proven its worth. Humanity has proven its worth. We may not have the biggest ships or the most advanced technology, but we have something you can't quantify: determination, ingenuity, and the will to fight for what's right. If the Council still sees us as a joke, then you're not paying attention." The chamber erupted into applause, the delegates' voices rising in a chorus of approval. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, her heart swelling with pride. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, and now they had earned their place among the stars. But as she gazed out at the cheering crowd, a thought nagged at the back of her mind. The Zorath Collective wouldn't forget this defeat, and neither would the other races who had doubted humanity. The fight was far from over, and the USS Dauntless would be ready.